makes sense. So yeah, my name is Ryan Pesch. I'm an extension educator. I work in community economic development up throughout West Central region. And thanks for the quote, Ben. I'm going to quit my job. No, I like your quote that you said.
Oh,
Yeah, so, but part of my job is the issue about dealing with the world's problems. And so it made me think about that. So in the world of community development, I work in a lot of different communities across the West Central area. And kind of like, well, how do we make such and such a happen? So in this instance, we're talking about tourism. And so this is a project we embarked upon, I believe last summer. Initially started with BSEG applying to be in this program and with a number of other communities across the state last spring. So here we're going to talk a bit about the findings from that project and talk a bit about the next steps. As an educator, my own goals for this time here that I'll be with you, one is that I don't want you to leave here saying, oh, hey, there was this guy from the university that babbled for a while. I forget what he talked about. It seemed to have something to do with tourism. Okay, I would much assume that if you're leaving here, the first part would be successful. I'll be successful if you leave here and you say, geez, I remember this one guy yapped about tourism, but you know what? We talked about some ideas about how to get tourism going here in our region. And you know what? I think a couple of them are pretty good. And you know what? Maybe there's one or two that I can help make happen. Right? So if you leave doing that, think about a couple of potential projects, ideas that you think really ought to be worked on as a good starting place for tourism for you. If you get there, then I'm successful. If not, you'll just be like, oh, I got to dabble for a while. And I put this here just to give thanks. So thanks certainly for BSEG in terms of organizing, getting involved in this project, and community development services. At the time, Liz Larkin that helped organize this as a consultant with it. We'd also like to thank the Southwest Regional Sustainable Development Partnership and that's a part of Extension University of Minnesota to help fund this project. So they did a lot of the funding for this project, not just your community, but the 5 communities that were in this project across the state. So you have one of 5 all doing this at the same time, all smaller communities. And then the involvement of the board and the leadership team, Mike and Brent, Audrey, someone else on that team, but I think just you 2 were here. So, and then any of you that attended our community meeting, that was actually right here. So, my agenda is to move through pretty quickly in terms of process and then the findings here for the first half, and then the second half get into this next steps, right? Because it's one of these situations in terms of a tourism assessment program. Is to assess, to kind of step back and say, what's possible here? So what you have in that document in front of you kind of relates to a lot of highlighting of the findings, right, through the process, about essentially kind of ideas in terms of moving forward with tourism development in the region. So I don't want to sit and linger here the whole time and then yap the whole time. We want to get here and then we'll put those little cards to work to at least get a temperature of the room in terms of where you guys feel there's some kind of energy to move forward on a project or two, right? So we're going to try to say, where is the best place to start? That's what we're looking to do. Somebody took this picture from this one part of that was a visitor here. I don't know, is this in anybody's yard?
Graceville.
It's in Graceville? Yeah. That ended up getting on the cover. I don't know. We like the picture. I don't know. So if anybody knows this guy, say he's on the cover of Report now. I don't know. He might get a kick out of that. But so why tourism? So what we had heard from the leadership team at BSEG was this is about diversifying our local economy. That is, we're realistic here. We're not going to be the next Brainerd or Branson. We don't think. The possibilities are slim. But in terms of diversifying our economy, we really think tourism has a great place. And this is something that we've not embarked upon a lot, so let's do this assessment and see where we're at and go from there. So in terms of the process, there's kind of 3 steps. The first phase, we had community, individuals, and groups do these inventory sheets to kind of say, what are the attractions of the area? You know, what are the organizations in the area that you'd be interested in as a visitor? The second part was what we call first impressions visit. There were 5 communities involved in this project, so it's almost like a mystery shopper situation. A team of people from one of the other communities involved came and visited here. You never saw them come or go, right? But they came here as just people that have never been to Big Stone County in their life as potential visitors and wandered around as if they were a visitor and had that experience and made notes in an organized fashion about what they found. And last part was this quote-unquote expert team visit. So myself, some other people from Extension and from the Partnership Board came here, and much like the first impressions visit, spent a day as visitors, kind of people outside of the community with new eyes, looking in and saying, okay, how easy it is for us to navigate this area as visitors? Are there attractions that we see are very viable, or some things are great opportunities that can be built on? And part of that was in here, in this room, we had a community meeting, looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of tourism in the region. So just getting people together and sit and talk about tourism in the area. So I can give a quick synopsis about kind of what we heard. So from the inventories, this area had a total of 10 inventories that were done, and people were ranking things, they were identifying things that they thought would be important to visitors. So in terms of attractions, there's a lot of mention about Bonanza Prairie, about Cocoa Park, St. Pauli Church. Odessa Dale got on there, but Odessa's a long ways away. Clinton Depot, all these things which are on more historic attractions. In terms of activities, things that were mentioned a lot related to hunting, shooting sports. The thing that was the highest rated attraction actually was bird watching. Right? We asked people to say, what are activities and attractions in the area, and rank them in terms of how authentic they are, what kind of quality they are, and bird watching was the highest rated attraction. People listed special events, and in this instance, St. Patrick's Festival was highest rated. The second stage, we had that first impressions visit, right? So the mystery visitors, if you will, that kind of came and went and just left their thoughts. This is what we heard from them. So we said, give us in terms of your first impression or your lasting impression of the area, what's a great positive? The one thing that they said, the scenic beauty and their interrelationships with this type of beauty in with the lake in this area was a real positive. In terms of a negative, this whole issue about signage for visitors, the challenge of finding attractions. So one instance that they brought up was they had the inventories. They knew that a lot of people were saying, hey, Bonanza Prairie is a great attraction. But in terms of them finding it was a little difficult. There's no signage. How do you know where it is? You know, you dig up your state map and or whatever, try to find that. In terms of opportunities, one that they really highlighted, they're like, wow, Tokwa Park is ranked high in terms of the inventories. It's also kind of acts as a sort of a gateway for visitors, and it did for them as well, right? So it's where you first kind of come to Graceville as a visitor. And they go, okay, so we checked out this Tokwa Park thing. Seems like such an opportunity in terms of this bike walking path around East Tokwa Lake. The biggest challenge that they laid out was distance, right? So coming from another part of the state, they're like, wow, you really gotta want to go to this part of western Minnesota. They said, there's a distance. And what they said in terms of overcoming that distance in their minds was, targeting people within the region, right? So instead of targeting people from a long distance to come here, who in the region and it's specifically outdoor enthusiasts might be targeted in a kind of a smaller region. Something we heard from the expert team. First and foremost, team is in agreement this idea of this sub-region or this area and not individual communities alone would attract visitors. So no one community alone is sort of like, would attract visitors from a distance, like, oh, I'm going to go just to Graceville, right? But as a region, as a sub-region, there's kind of a clustering or enough of attraction to say, okay, well, this area I'm going to visit. Thinking about niches and doing some research on that, there are two that really came to mind and came out with that the expert visit team. One is this niche based on wildlife associated recreation, right? So looking at just the mass of public lands, some of the other existing infrastructure related to shooting sports and hunting and the like in the area, as well as bird watching, which people highlighted earlier. Kind of like this whole part about wildlife associated recreation made sense. Doing a little bit of research after the fact on this, there's a great report by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service which really profiles people's use of public lands. Why are they going there? How far are they going? The like. A couple of interesting things out there. One is overwhelming majority of hunters stay in state, which makes sense with licensing issues and the like. But number two, this issue about rural versus urban hunters. A greater proportion of us in rural areas are hunters, but if you look at all hunters, the vast majority come from metro areas, right? There's more hunters in rural areas, but if you add us all up, you don't add up to as many people as the hunters coming from urban areas. So thinking about kind of where to target, and think about targeting metro areas kind of within a 3-hour area, or those, I think it's already been mentioned here tonight, those from the Wolf House, those visiting friends and relatives already. Oftentimes we don't think of that as a visitor segment, but for a lot of our communities, that's a very large visitor segment. People that are here visiting friends and relatives already in the area. And how then do you get them out, as opposed to just having them come and go? How do you get them to stay here longer and utilize, get into some activity? The second one is this whole issue on kind of agritourism, culinary tourism, right? Which kind of makes sense since I'm sitting here in Brent's Cafe, right? And so we dug up a little research, and we did it, and this came out in large part because of, think about all the already pre-existing producers that have direct marketing in the area, Inadvertent Cafe, other activities related to value-added products, aggregating product, and a lot of this. And one other thing that's highlighted is there's even a group tour that came to the area from Fargo Moorhead that Noreen Thomas organized, and that seemed to be a very good success. They came and visited farms and other producers. So that seemed to kind of be a niche place to look. Digging into some of the research, some from Iowa, some from Wisconsin. One part of that, though, again, is that what we see from this Iowa study is that of those that are engaged in agritourism, only about 10% say that they're really willing to travel a long distance for ag tourism activities, right? So yeah, that's a lot of corn mazes and that kind of stuff, but they also ask people about farm stays and all these other things. So there's maybe, again, that travel distance might be an issue. But still, at $137 per party on average that they found in Wisconsin, maybe that's a real opportunity. I mean, people are coming to the area, they're not just staying, but they're also spending money on local products and food products in particular.
Ryan, what's the average party? 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, the average party is 2. Yeah, the vast majority of people are 2.
Okay.
You know, so let me speed through this. Okay, see, Ryan is yapping, so I gotta move it. So while we're here, expert team, Topo Park, issues signage. Hey, we can find Topo Park real, great, but once you're there, what is it? Where am I going to go, right? So our one example of signage here was, well, we found the golf course sign, but it wasn't sitting. I don't think it was supposed to be sitting. It was just sort of leaned up against the building here for a while, next to a dumpster. So this was our example of bad signage. Although the sign itself is great, you know, but it's just kind of like laying there. So expert team also kind of remarked that the first visitor's impression, people said, what about a biking lane, a hiking lane? It's a a designated lane in terms of getting all around East Tokwa Lake.
Bike rental or?
Yeah, and equipment rental was something that was brought up as well.
Tennis court in town?
No.
When tennis rackets involved.
This issue about business infrastructure, there was some talk when we met with the community group about lodging and the like, and about maybe some specific types of lodging. But one thing, also talked about it, Patty was doing is kind of increasing the awareness and visibility of the existing lodging that's already in place. Especially with referrals, maybe some signage. I mean, as the one lodging facility on Main Street, Graceville, it'd be great if it's like, as a visitor, I know exactly where that is. I mean, if there ever is a business that's specifically related to visitorship, it's lodging. So in order to get visitors specifically to the lodging facility is very useful. Signage helps that. So the SWAT meeting, a bunch of ideas got up here. So again, this is what we heard from the community group, the community members that came to the SWAT meeting right here. Again, this niche about natural resources and farming, right? It kind of fits with this whole kind of travel green theme that we're seeing in travel. People talk about focus on day trips to the area, right? Instead of long haul trips. Some ideas, kite flying festival, right? Sort of like you give lemons, make lemonade. You got wind, you have a kite festival. I don't know. I think that's where that one came out. Let's talk about kind of lodging on farm, which kind of goes on farm. Let's go back here. A lot of discussion about kind of ways of tapping new talent, right? It's a local talent that can be showcased in an area. So how do you tap that new talent? Some talk about lodging together with lodge, guiding for wildlife opportunities in the area, expanding the arts meander marketing. A lot of people are saying, geez, here's something that's really working right now. The arts meander, it is bringing people to our region already. How can we sort of build on that in our communities in particular? To just, I like straight up recommendation ideas. Get an information kiosk, right? You know, it's part of the project idea that's tangible. So in the report, there's some details about each of these, and then in that executive summary, kind of highlights the major things. But in like the report, we go into kind of agritourism and maybe some best next steps, right? In terms of knowing what products are already here, aggregating product, some kind of cooperative marketing. If only a nice Google map which highlights all the producers that have direct market stuff locally. Possibly a resident-focused event, kind of like a local food expo or something, where people kind of learn about one another's products and showcase their products, to visitor-focused event. These are those same, I can just go quickly through the ones that are right on your paper, and then you get to flip the cards, okay? So I'm trying to get there. This clock is killing me. So we talk about enhancing Tokwa Park, improving signage. Okay, they're broken up in terms of 4 different parts, right? The first part's on attractions and services, building on local attractions and assets, right? How do you build on what you already have here? So talk about lodging on farms, information kiosk, promotion of day trips, right? So what I'm going to have you do with these cards is that I want you to kind of, so as I'm going through this, think about this. What do you think are kind of the next best steps for tourism? All right, so you might say, oh, yeah, that's the idea. I think that's the winner, okay? Because you're going to have to write 2 down. Second part is on tourism leadership. Let's talk about kind of involving more stakeholders with BSEG's work on tourism. Identify formal organization to take lead on individual projects. Consider those relationships with Prairie Waters, Big Stone Chamber, those organizations that are already doing tourism development in the area. In terms of community support, should you do an education effort on tourism and its benefits in the region, right? So there's some talk about, geez, do people even see tourism as real, or why would we even talk about tourism here, right? There might be a lot of people that are in that place in your community. So You need to do some kind of education effort on the benefits. Encourage businesses to cross-promote, right? A lot of that's already going on. Regular communication about tourism and local successes. Maybe an ongoing customer service training program. Lastly, there's the section on marketing. So, drill down and create a marketing plan with particular target markets and ways of reaching them, right? There's a lot of talk about, don't focus on somebody too far away. Who are your target markets, nearer, and how are you going to reach them, right? Develop a printer online map geared towards target markets. So for one example that was thrown out was this notion of a lot of public land. If you're targeting hunters, geez, wouldn't that be helpful to have this online map or an actual printed map of all the different public lands that are open for hunting in the area, as well as all the other associated businesses related to hunting. You can do the same thing with kind of ag tours. All businesses and organizations and events using the free registry at exploreminnesota.com and getting themselves listed. It doesn't cost anything for an event or organization to be listed there. Lastly, this idea of doing a YouTube video. Did you know how to do these? Do a video of the area in terms of really featuring the attractions of the area. One fun way of doing that is possibly by contest with local residents saying, what's great, why visit this area. Okay, see, it took me too long to yap through that. Now I want to put you to work, right? So I'm just kind of like, I know it's kind of crazy making, I just sort of like spit, I don't know, maybe 40 ideas at you, right? Right? And you're like, okay, Ryan, you just threw a bunch of ideas at me and you threw them on a piece of paper. But between those two things, we like to, at least like to take a temperature of the room, if you will, right? Because, I farm beside my day job. We want to do some winnowing here, right? You want to separate the seed from the chaff, if you will. Because they're going to be like, oh yeah, Ryan, these are some terrible ideas. Let's throw these over here. There's a few ideas here I kind of want to keep. All right? And that's up to you individually. So what I'd like you to do in terms of process, you got those blank cards. I'd like you to take 2 cards, right? Read through that executive summary a little bit. Maybe you're listening to me and you said, okay, I kind of like that idea. Write your picks that you think is the best place to start, right? Something you want to see go forward, right? What's the best place to start for tourism development in these communities? Put 2 cards down. Put your name on the card or cards you'd be interested in helping on, right? I don't know what that means at this point. Maybe it's a meeting. I don't know. I have no idea in terms of moving the project forward, but I know that we need to figure out where's the appetite in the room for any of these ideas, right? And as a facilitator, I always got to give you an out. If you don't want to help at all, you just want to give your opinion, just don't put your name on any cards, okay? Right? So I'm not trying to box you in the corner here. Does this make sense? Okay. All right, just take a few minutes just to get your own ideas down, and then we're going to start sharing